Making predictions is always a mug's game, but I think I'll give it a shot. So I have a strong suspicion that historians of the future will look back at our current period of time in utter bewilderment. How is it, they will say, that a supposedly sane society permitted the medicalisation of children who did not conform to gender stereotypes? How is it that figures in authority in the political class and the medical establishment thought it was a good idea to encourage the use of puberty blockers, which almost always lead to the taking of cross-sex hormones and sometimes irreversible surgery, for kids too young to possibly consent to such interventions? None of this makes sense. But there are some signs that the tide is turning. So this week, the NHS confirmed that children suffering from gender dysphoria will no longer be put on puberty blockers in the 2 new clinics being set up to replace the Tavistock paediatric clinic, which will be closing soon, following the report by Dr. Hilary Cass, which revealed that it was unsafe for children. The NHS has noted the ominous exception of clinical tests, which might end up being a loophole. The draft policy still uses language such as gender affirming, so we probably still have a long way to go. We're going to have to wait to see what happens, but this is definitely a promising development. Things aren't looking so positive in Wales and Scotland, where the governments have seemingly been entirely captured by gender identity activism, and the same is true of the US and Canada. But gradually, reason will prevail. For one thing, the Tavistock is going to close, although that closure does seem to keep being postponed. And one of the reasons why it was considered unsafe was the use of puberty blockers. The Cass review confirmed that there was simply not enough research into the long-term impact of these treatments. And one would have thought, when it comes to doling out drugs to kids, we might want to be sure that we're not putting them in danger. In fact, studies show that in the vast majority of cases, feelings of gender dysphoria in youth are resolved through puberty. So by blocking puberty, you are blocking the remedy. Whose bright idea was that? And even in those cases where the feelings persist, surely we can all agree that children aren't best placed to make life-changing decisions about their own bodies. And this has all happened very quickly, mostly because discussion on these issues has been stifled. Only today, Dr. Ahmad Malik has tweeted out a thread confirming that he is being investigated by the General Medical Council for expressing concerns that there has been an alarming increase in cases of child gender dysphoria and surgery. But why should this lead to an investigation? Dr. Malik is simply asking some legitimate questions, and it's bizarre that a health professional raising the alarm should be treated as some kind of heretic who needs to be silenced. All of this can be explained with one word: ideology. I've spoken before about how a small but powerful elite in the Western world have succumbed to a kind of hysteria, particularly around the notion of gender identity. The conflation of LGB with TQIA+ has confused a lot of people because, of course, sexual orientation has got nothing to do with gender. And as I argued on the show last week, gender identity ideology promotes anti-gay rhetoric and anti-gay concepts in order to sustain itself. If you want to understand how self-styled progressives have got it so wrong, consider this example. In 2020, Pink News released the following report on Pakistan.
Lastly, in a historic move, transgender people in Pakistan will finally get access to free healthcare. The government plans will also include covering all transition-related costs. Pakistan just said trans rights.
Of course, there was a reason why the government of Pakistan was offering to support transitional surgery. It's the same reason the government of Iran does, because homosexuality is illegal, and there is a widespread belief that it can be corrected through sex reassignment. So Pakistan, which by the way has since struck down all legal protections for trans people, it wasn't supporting trans rights at all. It was attacking gay people. The Pink News couldn't see that because the impact of ideology is that it blinds you to reason and stifles critical thought. And that's why activists continually misinterpret regressive ideas as though they were progressive. We know that between 80 and 90% of adolescents who were referred to the Tavistock were same-sex attracted, so they were effectively correcting gay kids. The theocrats of Iran and Pakistan would be proud. And even for those kids who weren't same-sex attracted, surely there needed to be more discussion. Surely we should be telling young people that there is no one way to be a boy or a girl, that being a tomboy doesn't make you less female, and playing with dolls doesn't make you any less male. And certainly being gay doesn't mean you're trapped in the wrong body. But in recent years, we've been avoiding those conversations, and as a result, we've been regressing. This latest statement from the NHS is a step in the right direction. Admittedly, it's only a small step and what feels like an impossible journey, but if I'm right, the historians of the future will be baffled that we ever allowed ourselves to stray from the path of reason in the first place.